Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. More big changes by the BC Provincial Government when it comes to development, specifically around transit. We're going to talk about what this new legislation means for the cities across Metro Vancouver and whether it's going to help add supply to the real estate market. So I'm not going to do my formal introduction here, but if this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hassan. I'm a real estate agent in Vancouver. If you want to learn more about me and how I can help you and your real estate situation, read the description box below and you can reach out to me if you want to chat about your specific scenario. But I want to hop right into this. More changes just when I thought that the changes from last week couldn't get any bigger, and that was basically getting rid of single family zoning for much of the province. Actually, I'm going to link to that video here. If you haven't watched that video yet, you may want to watch that first because some of the new changes announced are almost a layer on top of those original changes. But what's new this week is how the BC Provincial Government is going to legislate development surrounding what they call transit-oriented hubs. So that's SkyTrain locations, that's also bus loops, bus exchanges across Metro Vancouver. There's a lot of numbers in these new announcements, but I'm going to simplify it all. Basically, what they are doing is they're saying that if there is development to happen on residential land, of course, that's within 200 meters of a SkyTrain station, municipalities will have to allow for a minimum of 20 stories. They're also mandating as you get further back between 200 and 400 meters, that'll shift downwards 12 stories. It'll shift downwards to 8 stories as you're within 800 meters of that SkyTrain station. And similar with bus loops and bus exchanges, except that the minimum building height would be 12 stories. So as you can picture, the closer you are to transit, to SkyTrain, you'll have the taller towers, keeping in mind that this is just a minimum. Municipalities are more than welcome to build higher than this, but the reason we're seeing these changes is there are many underutilized SkyTrain locations when it comes to residential development. If you look at Nanaimo Station, King Edward Station, Rupert Station, you have all of these SkyTrain locations that are surrounded still by predominantly single family homes, or at best low-rise product, which is 4 to 6 stories, and it's not utilizing obviously the traffic flow and the convenience of having the SkyTrain. So when we look at Metro Vancouver, and if we look, for example, specifically at Burnaby, which is being used for an example, this is essentially a plan to create more Brentwood type locations. That's the best I can describe it on the Metro Vancouver side. And Vancouver has lagged well behind when it comes to transit-oriented development. So again, a minimum set of rules. In the description box below, I'll put a link to all of the different changes, how far you need to be and what the minimum height requirement is. The other change that's coming along with this is not only in terms of building heights, but the provincial government is saying you have to allow a certain amount of square footage. Now, this is what we call in the industry FSR, floor space ratio, and I'm going to circle back to this at the end of the video, but they are regulating just how much square footage the cities have to allow. So if you're in that 20-story category within 200 meters of a SkyTrain station, the cities will have to allow 5.0 FSR, and what that means, just in simple forms, is 5 times the area of the lot itself in interior square footage. So taller building heights, more space within these buildings. You can tell that the provincial government is trying to tackle this housing crisis from all angles. If you've watched my channels for a bit, we've talked about how you can make all the changes you want, but if you're not making it appealing to the development community, if they're not finding margin in their products and what they're able to put out there, they're not going to take on the projects. So this is basically an effort. This is a signal from the provincial government saying, hey, developers, look, we're mandating the municipalities to give you this. The other thing that they're doing as well is they are they're actually moving what we call CACs, community amenity contributions, which is what a developer would pay to the city as almost a negotiation before they get to the public hearing when they're trying to get a development through. The city and the developer go back and forth, and it's the best way I can describe it, it's almost like a mafia type of negotiation. It's the city saying, we need you to give us these funds. They go towards amenities, of course, recreation facilities, childcare facilities. There's no set in stone model of how it works. So it's literally developer and city going back and forth. And the developer's kind of in a tough spot, because if they want to get their project through, they have to pay these contributions. So what the provincial government is also doing is they're saying, look, that needs to be more black and white for the developer. We're going to have that process at the start, at the planning stage, which makes a ton of sense, because developers are working off of spreadsheets. They're working off of pro formas. They need to know what that number looks like to make sure the project is feasible. So if they have that data at the start, they can build it into the pro forma, and they can make sure that the project is going to make sense. So again, provincial government is doing everything to entice the developer to actually take on development projects. So this change that was just announced, it's massive. It's huge, stretches across Metro Vancouver. Again, it incorporates bus exchanges, bus loops as well. It's gonna, override any existing zoning. And again, cities can go above and beyond. Now, one of the biggest questions that I've gotten since we've done the Vancouver multiplex video, we've done the removing single families residential zoning essentially across the province. And now I'm sure I'm gonna get the question now is, how is parking gonna be dealt with all of these additional units being put into the market? And we got a bit of a line of sight of how that's going to look. Now, with these changes that were just announced, the provincial government is not setting any sort of minimum parking criteria for municipalities to follow for these locations that are close to transit. So what that tells you, and on the developer side, parking can be a significant financial and logistical challenge. Costs more, obviously, to incorporate parking in the development, especially if it's underground. So this is another way for the city to say, look, we're going to make your pro forma. We're going to help your pro forma here by taking away that minimum parking requirement, and then it'll be up to the cities to decide how that's going to look beyond that scope when we talk about Vancouver multiplexes that are away from transit. So parking, guys, it's basically they're creating communities and cities surrounding SkyTrain. Their expectation is that vehicle ownership will come down as people live closer to SkyTrains. But yeah, parking is essentially going to be on the street. There's going to be more congestion on the street, but we've gotten to a point in the housing crisis where it doesn't matter what the solution is. It's going to come with another set of challenges. But those challenges, in the eyes of many, are more worth dealing with than the challenges of not having enough units. Now, the BC provincial government is expecting that with these changes, over the next 10 years, that could amass to 100,000 new housing units coming to the market. And like I mentioned, this is basically layered on top of what was announced last week, where single-family zoning is out and multi-units are going to be allowed right across the province. Now, the biggest key, and when we talk about all of these changes, the biggest key on whether any of this is going to work is going to come down to the policy manual that the provincial government is releasing in the next 2 months. We're told we're going to get it by the end of the year. Within this policy manual is going to be some site-specific criteria that's going to be mandated across municipalities. And I talked about FSR, which is the floor space ratio, the amount that a developer is allowed to build. And this is going to be the absolute key to whether implementation is actually going to happen on more of these units. And they're going to specify what that floor space ratio needs to be at a minimum. I'm going to give you an example. We're going to go back to the Vancouver multiplex. And, the standard East Vancouver lot, for the most part, is around 4,000 square feet. And basically, the FSR that's being allowed under the multiplex is 0.7 FSR, or you can pay additional to get to 1.0 FSR. So what that means is if you have a 4,000 square foot lot, you can build 4 times 1,000 square foot units. Now, when people are looking at that plan, even the city themselves, they're not expecting a ton of adoption because of not being able to build enough, not as aggressive, not enough interior square footage. Of course, that amounts to dollars and cents for the developer, again, to make it all feasible. But if you're not allowed to build enough, the numbers just don't work. When we look at Vancouver detached product, for example, we look at January of this year, prices just skyrocketed up to June with the anticipation of the multiplex policy coming into play. And now, I work with a lot of developers. We're looking at different sites, and the numbers just don't make sense at that FSR. Even at 1.0, if you pay the extra, definitely doesn't make sense at 0.7. Now, we have to keep in mind, like, the overlying reason for all this is, yes, we need more units for the housing supply to solve housing supply issues, but it's really to attack what's missing, and that's the missing middle of housing. And it's really important to determine, what is that missing middle? Now, for me, as a real estate agent, feet on the street every single day, for me, the missing middle of housing is between 1,000 and say 1,400 square feet. I think that's the size of home. So basically, missing middle is, we have enough condos, we have enough detached homes, we need to get the townhouses, the duplexes, the triplexes. We need to get more of those. And in my opinion, again, it's going to be between 1,000 and 1,400 square feet where we don't have enough quantity. Now, on the Vancouver East side, if you're allowing 4 times 1,000 square foot units, are you not just adding a bunch of condos to the mix? I think for a young family, growing family, perhaps a couple that wants to grow a family in the city, I think they can be happy and adequate with 1,000 to 1,400. So if you don't offer enough FSR in development, you're basically adding a bunch more condos and the numbers stop making sense. So circling back, this FSR, it's the first thing I'm going to look for when this policy manual is released. I hope it is more aggressive than what the city of Vancouver is doing at 0.7 or 1.0. It needs to be higher than that. We need to be able to accommodate larger living spaces, so we're actually targeting this missing middle of housing. Otherwise, we're just adding a bunch more condos. And even then, as the FSR shrinks, the adoption rate shrinks as well. So this is new legislation that's being tabled by the provincial government. I don't expect anything to hold it up. Everything they've done so far, the Airbnb changes, it's just passing through the legislature. So, very likely that this is going to move through the process. Now, obviously, some of the municipalities are pushing back, both on removing the single family zoning. There's going to be pushback on this as well. But, from a provincial government perspective, I don't think any of us can look at them and say, look, they're not trying to tackle this from all angles. I personally, there is some stuff that they're doing I disagree with, but I do like how they're being very developer focused. They're looking at it from a developer's angle, because at the end of the day, it's a partnership between the developer, the municipalities, the provincial government. Everybody needs everybody to solve this crisis. It's not the big bad developers trying to make massive profits. No, they're taking on a huge amount of risk. They need to be compensated for that risk. And I think with changes like this, it's really going to create an effect in that development community, saying, look, I feel like this is a partnership now. We're going to move forward on projects. We're going to actively engage rather than holding off on projects, right? Because again, if we implement all these changes and the developers don't build, it's all going to mean nothing. So there you have it, guys. I hope you learned something in this video. If you did, hit the like button, because what that does is it takes the video and it sends it out to more people so they can learn from it as well. And if you enjoy weekly real estate content, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a future video. And lastly, if you're in the Vancouver area or Fraser Valley and you want to talk with me personally about your real estate situation one-on-one, you can book me for a call in the Calendly link below, or you can just send me a text, give me a call, shoot me an email, whatever's easiest for you. I'd love to chat with you, but I want to thank you so much for watching this week's video, and I look forward to seeing you in next week's video.